In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jesus is the Word. When Jesus was here on the earth, he lived a life that expressed who God was, both in his life, the way he lived, but also with his words. So we may be thinking about things that Jesus said when he taught or when he tried to encourage people. Maybe words sometimes of correction or words of instruction, words of forgiveness, words of hope, words that have to do with things in the past or even things in the future. Jesus spent a lot of time quoting Old Testament law and prophets. And so Jesus was the Word that became flesh, and he lived among us. Yet when Jesus died, he spoke 7 different sayings on the cross, and there's something about the last words of someone when they're about to die. And certainly you would think, what they would say at that moment would be something of significance, of importance, something they would want people to remember, or some truth that they value. So they may saying that to their family members or their friends, or maybe whoever would be present. And so when we think about the last words of Jesus when he was on the cross, that's why we're spending time thinking about what did he say, what does this mean, and does it have any application to our life at all? And so today we are like at the 7th statement of 7 statements. So this is, we say it's the very last thing, and this is what the scripture says. When he said this, then he gave up his spirit. He died at this point, so this is his last word. And so as we think about what this means then, what was Jesus trying to convey? Is he trying to teach us something or show us something? How is he instructing us through this word that he spoke? And so we've already looked at the first 6. And today we want to look at this one when Jesus spoke to his Father, and he said to his Father, "Into your hands I commit my spirit." I deliver, I surrender, I give really back to you the Spirit for keeping, for entrusting. I'm going to give it back to you. So into your hands I commit my spirit. That's from Luke chapter 23 and verse 46. So it's kind of interesting as we see what surrounds this time. Jesus was crucified, put on the cross about 9 o'clock in the morning. And so here in Luke 23 and verse 44, it was about noon. So we would say like right at 12 o'clock, lunchtime, all the way until 3 o'clock. Says that darkness came over the whole earth, the whole area. Darkness just surrounded the people. That's for 3 hours. Like this is the middle of the day. It would be like us going outside now and it maybe looks like it is, I don't know if it was pitch black or just very dark. Something happened that you'd even mention this. It's not like, well, it was an overcast day. We weren't sure if it was going to rain or not. It was just one of those days. It always happens once in a while. It was not that. There was something happening here when the darkness covered over for 3 hours. And you could imagine whether you're someone there supporting Jesus, maybe like a family member, his mother, Apostle John was there. Or maybe it was the religious leaders who were responsible for having him been charged and now found guilty and now being... Or it could have been the Romans who weren't really sure what was going on. We're just doing our job and we're crucifying, but we've heard words that he's been saying and we've heard rumors about what other people have said about him. I mean, wouldn't you have a little bit of fear? Isn't there something going on? Kind of like this is eerie? Like, is this a weather pattern or is this something God is doing? And the implication is it's God. And so what is happening during this time? We remember when Jesus was on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So God, because Jesus took our sin upon him, God turned his back on Jesus. God withdrew from Jesus. God, the Father, was separated because God cannot have fellowship or union with sin. Jesus took upon our sin. And so there was this separation. There was this challenge in the life of Christ now. without God? So if God is light, well, what is darkness? Old Testament, quite often, darkness is a picture of the judgment of God. The judgment of God that, yes, who's being judged this day? It's Jesus Christ is being judged for sin, not his sin, but our sin. But if it was only for 3 hours, then what happened near the end of Jesus' life? The last minutes, we may say, was evidently getting light again. And so we see a change now that's happening. And this is when Jesus speaks again. Speaks words that help us understand even maybe what is coming next. In Luke chapter 23 and verse 46, Jesus called out in a loud voice. So again, thinking that he's, we would say almost expired. I mean, all of his energy is gone. He's weak. He's struggling just to survive. He says, I'm thirsty. They give him a drink, and then he's able, loud voice. I guess that's the emphasis. It's not like Jesus is just whispering. People weren't even sure what he said. It was kind of a little bit mumbling. Maybe we have to try to interpret something, fill in the blanks. No, this is something that was very powerful. He wanted people to hear. Why was this? What does he want us to hear then? So there's the people that day who heard it, and then there's us that read about it. We hear it. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. So again, interesting that if it is indeed getting light now, so we've already kind of said Jesus in the past said, my God, why have you forsaken me? What's that saying? When he's calling out to God, it's not an intimate relationship. He felt separated from the Father, but now he's feeling Father. And how often you go read through the Gospels when Jesus would even speak about God or pray to God, he'd always address God as Father, my Father. And so now he's feeling that relationship is restored. Father is listening. Father, a relationship. By the way, just wanted to say Happy Father's Day to people. We realize that we're not the perfect Father, right? We're not like the Father in heaven. Father in heaven is perfect. He's righteous and he's just. He makes no mistakes. He's all loving and all kind, but he's also all just and all righteous. So the Father in heaven is certainly our example of what we're trying to be as earthly fathers, but we're not perfect. But Jesus is calling out to his Father in heaven. And what he's saying is, I'm going to surrender my spirit. That's what Jesus' life was about. Jesus' life was about surrender, about giving up his life. Before Jesus went to the cross, we read the statements that Jesus made. And again, a lot of these are in the Gospel of John. That this was not some horrific thing that went awry. It's kind of like, there was a big plan. I was going to set up an earthly kingdom, and now I've died. People have arrested me. They've bound me. I can't get loose. Now I'm on the cross. And people even mock me and say, if you're the Christ, come down from the cross. And Jesus is like, you're right, I can't come down. Look at me. I'm a victim of other people. Jesus did not die as a victim. Jesus died as a willing participant in the salvation plan of God. And this is what Jesus said over and over again. For instance, in John chapter 10, in verse 17, Jesus says, no one takes my life from me. No one's just going to come and take my life. That's not going to happen. But I'm going to lay my life down. Like you can say all these people the religious leaders made their choice, Pilate made his choice, even Herod could make a choice, the Roman soldiers made their choice, all these people made a choice to kill Jesus. That's why Jesus died. That's not the way it worked. Jesus said there was a plan, I knew the plan, and I was willing to submit to the plan. That at any time, just like the song says, he could have called 10,000 angels, and he could have to set him free. But he didn't. Because he's saying, I've chosen this. I've decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to submit to the Father's plan. So I have authority to lay down my life, and I have the authority at any time. What he's saying, I can take it back. He could have, even on the cross, come down using the power that he had, but he didn't. And so it's true, I don't know if you've heard that statement, but it was not the nails that held Jesus to the cross. It was love. He did it because that's what he chose, and because he submitted his life to the Father's will. Even when Jesus was being tried before Pilate, you remember Pilate was questioning Jesus, and Pilate was not even getting the answers that he was hoping to get. In Luke chapter 19 and verse 10, do you refuse to speak to me, Pilate asked of Jesus? Don't you realize I have power to either free you or crucify you? So Pilate's questioning Jesus, but this is what Jesus said. You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Even the power you think you have is not yours, and it can be taken away at any time. This is a part of a bigger plan than you understand. And Jesus knew this. In John chapter 10 and verse 15, Jesus says, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And so this is the decision that Jesus made, that he would go to the cross. Now we also realize that when Jesus said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, is also mentioned in Psalm chapter 31. So we would say this is like a fulfillment of something that was written many years ago by King David, that he was going through a struggle in his own life. In Psalm 31 and verse 5. In Psalm 31, let me just add a little bit more to what verse 5 says. And, we've said that before when Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? We said, well, that's from Psalm chapter 22. And the idea is that the people would know Psalm 22 and they would be able to think about what else is Psalm 22. So they could almost recite it in their mind. So it's kind of like today we would say, when you start a song lyric, you say the first line, and then people say, well, thanks a lot. I've been thinking and singing that song all day. You just got it stuck in my head. You just started it off. You just had to say the first, few words of the verse. And, that's what I keep thinking, reciting, singing it through. It's in my mind. And maybe that's what Jesus was doing when he quoted, even here in Psalm 31. But listen to what it says there in verse 9. And again, maybe you could read this yourself sometime. There's 24 verses. It may take us a while to read through the whole chapter. But read through it and think about what else may have come to mind for the people that day when Jesus quoted verse 5. Verse 9 says, be merciful to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, my soul and my body with grief. My life is consumed by anguish and my years by groaning. My strength fails because of my affliction and my bones grow weak. Because of all of my enemies, I am the utter contempt of my neighbors. I am a dread to my friends. And those who see me on the street flee from me. I'm forgotten by them as though I were dead. I've become like a broken pottery. So King David is going through this in his life. He's going through a lot of suffering and struggle. As the king, people are rejecting him. People want another king. Even his own son Absalom is trying to take over the kingdom. So he had a lot of people pursuing him, trying to take his life, defaming him and mocking him, saying a lot of untrue things about him. So David is suffering a lot. But here's the challenge for us. When Jesus said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, he said that when he died. You and I cannot say that when we die unless we're willing to say it when we live. And that's what Psalm 31 is about. David's not at the point of death. He's in the middle of life. So during our life, we have to say, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Everything I am is surrendered to you. I'm going to leave it in your hands. I don't have to worry about this anymore. I don't have to control this anymore. I don't have to let this bother me anymore. I don't need to be concerned about the future. I don't need to be concerned about working all the issues out. I'm going to surrender into your hands. I'm going to commit my spirit, my soul, my life, everything. It's the entirety of who I am. It's the very foundation and the basic of my life. I'm going to say, God, I'm going to give it to you. And that may mean that we have to die to ourselves. We have to kind of die while we live, because I've surrendered it all to him. Now, Paul said something like that in Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20. He said, and this is when Paul's still alive. He's not talking about how he's going to die. He's talking about how he's going to live. I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. This is a life lesson for us. This is what Jesus' life was all about. The first words that we have of Jesus when he was a young boy, and we know it's not the first words he ever spoke, because this is when he was about 12 years old. They've gone down to Jerusalem to worship, probably one of the festivals. Family has left, probably with their extended family and friends. You remember they lived up in Galilee, about 70 miles north of Jerusalem, so they're making a journey home. May actually take them 2 days to get there, but after a while, parents realize Jesus is not with us. He's not in the crowds. He's not with his friends. He's not with aunts and uncles. Where is Jesus? He's not here. I know sometimes parents are really concerned when, your child is missing. Like, where could he be? Is he in trouble? Did he get hurt? Has somebody where's my child? We're concerned. So Mary and Joseph, very concerned about Jesus. I mean, it's one thing to lose your child. I mean, it's something else kind of when you lose God. Okay, I'm wearing a mask. That was supposed to be funny. Okay, so, all right. Forget that. It's not funny. No, I'm just kidding. It is funny. But anyway. Sorry, I thought it was funny. Y'all just didn't get it. But where is Jesus? They went back. Where is he? And it seems like they were searching around Jerusalem, but Jesus said, didn't you know where I was? Like, why would you be looking up and down the streets and going to other people's houses and asking people, why wouldn't you just go where you think I would be and I should be and I ought to be and where my place is? Why are you searching everywhere? Didn't you know that I had to be in my Father's house? Didn't you know, a translation may say, I had to be about my Father's business? That's why I came. So that I would say, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, my life, my everything. It's what I live for. I'm devoted to this. And that's really what a Christian is. Really, to sum it up, a Christian is just someone who says, I've given it all. I've surrendered. The song, I surrender all. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, don't we really, in fact, want to rewrite the song? I surrender most. I surrender some. Dear God, I'll give you a little, but I surrender all. That's what Jesus did. Into your hands, I commit everything. I commit my spirit. And this is what Jesus was saying when he was on the cross. It's interesting, as all these events happened, and it's just kind of almost eerie to think about that day when Jesus died. Not only was it dark, when Jesus died, there was an earthquake. When Jesus died, The tombs were open, and some of the righteous people that had died are now walking around. They've come back from the dead. I mean, what does that do to people? If you remember when Jesus was on the cross, the things that he said, the way he lived, one of the centurions, this would have been a Roman guard that had people under him. But when he saw what happened, when he saw the events, when he heard Jesus speak, when he saw how Jesus treated people, he had maybe some background of maybe the trial, or maybe even before that, he had heard in the city about things that Jesus had done, miracles or teachings, or the way that he loved and cared for people. But the centurion who was there at the cross saw what happened. What did he do? He praised God and said, surely this was a righteous man. Other translations say, surely, not translations, other gospels, surely he was the Son of God. He was who he claimed to be. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because at the cross, what else do we find? Jesus said to a criminal on the cross, today you'll be with me in paradise. And when we did that study, at least we as me, kind of came to the conclusion it was probably a Jewish man who had been caught for either stealing or insurrection, or he was one of the people that was working under Barabbas, or we don't know exactly who he was, but probably not a Roman being crucified in the Jewish city of Jerusalem. Probably a Jewish man. So one Jewish man gets saved, and here's one Gentile man that turns to the Lord. So even at the cross, isn't that interesting? It's at the cross that people get saved. It's at the cross where Jews and Gentiles can come together. It's at the cross where we can find peace not only with God, but with each other, because we're all there at the foot of the cross, receiving salvation that comes from Jesus. And so here's a centurion who surrenders his life to God. So Jesus, the way he died, made an impression on people. It's just a few years later, you remember Stephen was preaching about Jesus in Acts chapter 7. And at the end, the people were so upset at his message, they wanted to kill him. And so they picked up stones and they were stoning him to death. But look what Stephen prayed. Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. What? Receive my spirit? It almost sounds like, in your hands I commit my spirit. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it, you receive it. Same kind of language. Receive my spirit. I'm going to surrender my spirit to you. Now, he didn't surrender his life. He died, because people were stoning him. But he said, receive my spirit. And there we see him also offering forgiveness. Lord, do not hold this sin against them. And so we see the power of God working in one of the disciples, that his death was very similar, at least his response and his reaction and his submission and his kindness and love, similar to Christ. Stephen could do that because not only did he do that in his death, he did that in his life. And that's what we are called to do, to become more like Christ. We also see when Jesus died, he said, it is finished. That was last week. And now he's saying, into your hands I commit my spirit. But when Jesus breathed his last, when it was over, we find out something else happened. It says in the temple, the curtain that separates the place of the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant is, which is kind of symbolic of the presence of God, the power of God, the law of God, the glory of God. No one could go into that place, into the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest, and only once a year, and only after he had made purification, only after he had sought forgiveness and sanctification. He then could go into the Holy of Holies, into the place in the presence of God. But now this curtain, commentators say about 60 feet high, about 4 inches thick. Curtain was torn. Now, a man would have a great difficulty tearing a curtain that size from the bottom up. But it would be impossible for a man to tear that curtain from the top to the bottom. God is the one. What's the point? This happened when Jesus died? I mean, couldn't God have waited? No, he did it to say, now the sin debt has been paid. Now we are free. We are free from our sin. We're free from unrighteousness. We're free for a relationship with God. But now we're free to go into, everyone, we're all free to go into, could we say, the Holy of Holies. We're free to go into the presence of God. Isn't that what Hebrews says? That we can come boldly before the throne of God to worship and to pray and to seek God in the Holy of Holies. It's not only so we can go into the presence of God, but symbolically so God can come out of this holy place and live inside. If that's where the Spirit of God was, in this magnificent temple, where does the Spirit live today? Where does it dwell? In the hearts of Christians. God's Spirit lives within us. Because of what Jesus did, we are free to come into the presence of God and have God dwell in our life. We are going to sing a song. Jesus paid it all. All to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, but he washed it white as snow. We always give an encouragement for people. Maybe today you're thinking, I need to commit my life into the hands of God. I need to surrender. I need to give it up. I need to say, I'm going to entrust everything in my life into the hands of the Father. I'm going to let him take care of it. I'm going to let him control it. I'm going to let him make decisions. He's going to guide me and lead me. I don't know what the future holds. I know he does. He knows the future. I don't know how things are going to turn out. He knows how it's going to turn out. I don't even know all the needs of my heart today, never mind the needs I'm going to have in the future, but he's got all that covered. So I'm going to surrender it to him. If we can encourage you in your walk, in your faith, in your commitment to surrender to Christ. And if today you want to surrender by saying, I'm going to give it all to him, and maybe you've never made the final commitment to say, I'm going to go through this act of baptism so that my sins can be washed away and God's Spirit can come live inside of me. It's interesting in Acts chapter 2 how it's described that first of all, our sins have to be forgiven. Because the Spirit cannot come and live in a heart that is full and guilty and dirty and defiled with sin. The sin's got to be removed before the Spirit comes in. Now, we don't want to just have our life cleaned up and leave it vacant. Well, that's no good either. They both go hand in hand. The forgiveness that comes through the blood of Christ. Jesus said he's going to go back to the Father and send the Spirit. And the Spirit comes today and lives inside of our temple. Right? That's what 1 Corinthians 6 says. It's this right here. I know it's not pretty, but it's the temple of God. I know, not the outside, okay? But inside, God lives. He lives inside the temple of God. If you want to make that decision, we'd love to help you. If we can pray with you, encourage you. You don't have to come forward. You can talk to us after, meet with one of the elders or myself or one of the other church leaders that you have faith and trust in. Talk with somebody. We want to help you and encourage you. So we're going to sing this song. that'll help us as we make decisions to follow Christ. Jesus paid it all. So Ken will come up and lead us.